Hey folks, it's RBB. Today I'd like to talk to you about setting, manipulating, and moving keyframes in After Effects. So I went ahead and created a new composition, 1920 by 1080. I made it 24 frames per second, and it is 6 seconds long. You guys excuse my voice, I have a bit of a cold today. It is 6 seconds long, so that's how ours is set up. I went ahead and I made a yellow solid background just because it's pretty and cheerful. And then I made a shape layer. I chose this shape. I chose the star, dragged out a star, and then right click and renamed it red star, just so I didn't have a shape layer with no name. Excuse me. So when we open up this red star layer, we see that our contents of this layer is a polystar. Great. Okay, that's fine. Transform is what we want to do. We want to make it move. We want to animate it. So to transform something, to change something, we can move it, scale it, and rotate it. So position, scale, and rotate in After Effects are our move, scale, and rotate options. Anything in 2D or 3D, if you want to change it, you're either going to move it, you're going to change its size, or you're going to rotate it. Those are our options. We also have the option of being able to see it or not, the opacity, and we have the anchor point, which is basically like the center of its world. In this case, when it's born, the anchor point is here in the center of the layer, and I made this star over here. So the anchor point is over here to the side. That's great if I want that to be there, meaning that if I want to rotate and orbit around the center of its world, that's exactly where I want it to be. Okay, so awesome. If I want my object to be the center of its own world, okay, then I want to grab that object and I need to make sure that its anchor point is lined up with the object. To do that, you use this little tool right here under the word animation. It's called the pan behind tool, which is a stupid name. It used to be called the anchor point tool. Click on this little guy, left click on that belly button and move it to the center of your object. Now I'm going to move back to my screen selection tool. When I rotate, now this guy will rotate around his own center. He's the center of his own world, aren't we all? Okay, so there we go. There's our star. So we want to move this guy, and we want After Effects to help us out. So keyframes are the most important movements in how your object is moving. So for example, if I'm clapping my hands move a certain width apart. That is a key. I need to remember that position. And then they're going to come together, and when they meet, I hear a clap sound, right? So apart, together, apart, together. Those are two keyframes. The apart is how far apart my hands move, and then together is where they meet. If I have those keyframes far apart, then I'm going to slowly move my hands apart, and then slowly move my hands back together and probably not hear any sound. If I have my keyframes fairly close together so that I have to very rapidly move from out to in, then I hear a clap sound. Okay, like you didn't know what clapping was. I had clap for you, right? The faster I clap, the less time I have between opening and closing my hands. Okay, so those are the keyframes. Or if you think about like chopping wood, your arm up in the air with an axe at the top, that is a keyframe. When the axe hits the wood, that is the other keyframe. All the movements in between, back in the day, as an animator, you would have drawn the keyframes, the top and the bottom, and you would have passed it down the hallway to some underling who did what was called in-betweening, and they drew all the other axes in between those two keyframes. We don't have to do that now. The computer does it for us mostly. So what we do is if we move forward in time, let's say where we want this guy to move. Let's say at 1 second, I want After Effects to remember where he is, and then he's going to start moving. So at this point in my timeline, I'm going to turn on the keying for position. So I'm going to go to position, and I'm going to click the little stopwatch. That is an on-off switch. I am allowing keying, I'm turning keying off. This is not to add another keyframe. I'm either, yes, I'm keying, or no, I'm not keying. So in this case, click it, it's blue, yes, keying is on. A couple things happen. I get a little key diamond right here, and After Effects drops a key in the timeline. Now I can move forward in time, let's say half a second, okay, because here we're at 6 seconds. So half a second, I'm going to grab this guy with my selection tool, and I'm going to move him up in the air. It created a path for me, and it shows me how many steps, basically, how many frames between here and here. After Effects automatically dropped another key here because I stopped moving. Okay, if I don't move forward in time and I move this somewhere else, that key doesn't change. It's still remembering this information at this point. Okay, I haven't changed anything. It's just, all right, I'm remembering that position. I'm remembering that position. I'm remembering that position. Okay, so that's where I want it to be. It's remembering it at that point. Let's move forward another half a second and move this down. And let's move a whole second all the way to 3 seconds and move it back up in the air. Now, what the difference is I have a half a second between here and here. So I have half a second for my object to get to this new position. So it has to move pretty quickly. And then I have another half a second for it to get to this one. I have a whole second for it to get to this one, so it can take its time and leisurely get there. If I move this out to, let's give it a couple seconds. Let's give it from 3 to 5 seconds. And I want him to move down here. It has 2 seconds, 24 frames each, right? It has 48 frames to get there. So it's going to be much slower. And you can see all the frames to get there. This one only has that many frames to get there. This is faster, slower and slower. Okay? So if we play this, we move back to the beginning of our timeline and hit the space bar. Okay, those are going to move fairly quickly, and then it's going to go slow. Okay, does that make sense? If the simplest thing you can think is if I am standing still and I have to get to a position, how long do I have to get there? If I have to get there by the end of the day, I need to get to this new position in a really long time, and I'm going to move really slowly. If I want to be the first one to push the button or to win, I need to get to that position very quickly in fewer frames per second. So the quicker I need to get to the new position, the closer those frames, those keys need to be. So let's say I really want this to move more evenly. Okay, right now it's moving like this, and I would like it to move smoother. So I can grab any one of these just by left-clicking on them, okay, and sliding them around, sliding them forward, backward in the timeline. What that's doing is saying, okay, you were at this position and you had this amount of time to get to this key. Now I'm giving you this much time to get to the new key position, but guess what? I have less time to get to this one. So that's only changed there in the end. So it's going to move slow and then faster. Okay, the closer they are, the faster they move. So if I want this guy to ping, ping, ping around very quickly, I will grab all of these keys and move them. I'm just left clicking and dragging them. Now I want to remember that I have 24 frames per second. So the frames per second are going to tell me how many of these frames go by, of course, in a second. So now in 1 second, I have him making those 5 moves. I'll go back to the beginning and hit the space bar. Ping, 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 ping. And he doesn't do anything else afterwards because the last time I told it to remember where it was right here, and it remembers it till the end, and then it starts over. Okay? So that is setting keyframes. You move to the new place, and it automatically does a keyframe. Let's try another thing. So this is keying just the position. Let's try another one. Let's do rotation. So let's move to our first keyframe here, and we can do that. We can either drag it over here, but to make sure that you're being exact, you can always click on this snap back and forth. I'm going to snap to my next keyframe. I'm going to turn on rotation. I'm going to say, rotation, you are going to do some rotating. So at this point, you're remembering your position. That's somebody else's job. We don't care. Rotation is now on the job, and it is remembering where it is right now. And it is at 0 full rotations in 2 degrees, just because I was playing around with it earlier. Let's say in 1 second, I want this star, it's not exactly 1 second, I want this star to rotate 40 degrees. I can go over here and I can click on this number and put in 40 degrees, which is sort of a random number for something to rotate. And if I play between these, it's going to move because position's over there doing its job, but it's also rotating. It's kind of hard to tell because it went really fast, but you can see that it is rotating just 40 degrees, which is not very much. Okay, you can see it's sort of on its 2 legs, and by here it's on its 1 leg. It rotated 40 degrees. That's not very much. Let's pop to that second key and say, instead of 40 degrees, I want you to turn around 3 times. Well, I don't have to do the math and think 360 degrees times 3 or times 47 or times whatever. I can just say how many full turns. I want it to move 2 full turns, 720, plus I've got a couple extra degrees. So this is going to turn 760 degrees in this amount of time. So if we play now, woo, okay, these guys are all doing their own job. Position is moving it where it's supposed to go. Rotation is rotating in the amount of time between its keys. We can put as any of these that we want to. We could say, we need to hire another guy. Let's hire scale. I'm going to turn on scales. Hey, scale, we're working. So scale's like, great. I know that this is how big I am at this, right here at this point. Halfway through, I am going to get bigger. I can put in a number here, or when you get the little arrow, the side-to-side arrow here, I can left-click and drag. Okay, and there's a little chain, which means they're constrained together, so they're going to keep the same size. I'm going to have him get really big right here. And when he's done moving right here, I'm going to have him get real small. So now we're moving from here to here to here to here. We're spinning from here to here, right? There's only 2 keyframes, here and here for spinning. And size is going from here to here to here in size. So now 3 different parameters are happening. Okay? And they do not affect each other at all. They're all doing their own job. They're one-trick ponies. Position is paying attention to position. Scale is paying attention to scale. Rotation is paying attention to rotation. If I decide, oh, you know what, I don't really want it to move, I just want it to get bigger or smaller, I can turn off position. I can just click this stopwatch and those keys will go away. So if I want to completely delete them, I just turn off keying and it goes away. If I want all of this to happen slower, I want to move the keys farther apart, right? So remember, from here to the door, you've got 2 seconds to get from here to the door. You're going to move pretty quickly. If I say you have 2 hours to get to the door, you're going to move pretty slowly. So the how spread out they are is time. I have only 1/4 of a second to get here. If we move it further out, I have longer time to get there, so I move slower. To move a key, you simply click on a key and left click and drag it. So I'm going to drag this one out. So what happens here is it's going to move quite quickly from here to here to here to here, and then it's slowly going to move to this position. Okay, because I've got plenty of time to get from this key to this key. All right, and I can grab multiple keys at a time. I'm going to marquee select over these 3 right here, and I can left click and drag them. So my first movement is going to be quite slow, then it's going to go bam, 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 and then it's going to move quite slow to the end. Notice that it had no effect on the scale and rotation. They are separate parameters. If I want this to rotate slower, then I just want to move this key. It still needs to rotate 3 times. I'm not rotating it less. I'm just rotating it slower. I'm going to move that key apart. Now when it moves, it's going to get slower between these keys. Now notice that the size, the scale, we didn't change it. We didn't move that one. So it finishes its job halfway through and then stays the same scale the rest of the way. Okay? So to move these, you can grab one, you can grab multiple, you can grab all of them. Okay? When you are at the diamond stage where you can see them, you are on the manipulatable layer of the keys. Sometimes in some other tools like puppet warping, you sometimes have to go down a layer, down a layer, down a layer, down a layer to find the actual keys for that parameter. But here at the top layer, basically just our transform, move, scale, and rotate. We've got keying on each. Okay, so you might say, well, what if I want this to happen? Let me move these guys closer together. All right, make them kind of evenly spaced. Let's say I want this to happen. Whoops. Let's say I want this to happen a couple of times. Ooh, yes, silly. Click, left click, drag them over. Okay, they're relatively spaced out. Let's say I want him to do this again. I want him to do that exact same motion again. Okay, I want to just go ahead and repeat. So he's going to jump back to here. Instead of like jumping back boop, 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 in time, these keys can repeat. So we can grab a set of keys, we can copy them. Okay, we can move forward to where we want them to start again and paste them. Okay, move forward and paste them. So now that's going to do that movement 3 times. Okay, so I'm going to hit the space bar. It moves, it does it again, it does it again. Now you may say, why didn't it, when it hit the end here, it pops back. Why didn't it do that here? Because remember, at its end point, at its point right here where it's at the end of its movement, its next key is over here at the beginning. So it moves it for us. That's awesome, right? So it's moving around 3 times. And it's changing in scale only in this first shift, and it's rotating through like 2.5. Okay, so keys are very easy to manipulate if you just keep in mind that they're all on their own parameter. You can key anything that has a stopwatch next to it. So even something like the star. Okay, my star, because he's selected, I can see him over here in my shape properties. And fill color has a stopwatch. So does that mean I can change color as I do something? Yes. So my color right here, if I key the color, okay, and you're like, well, I don't see color over here. It's not in the transform. We're not transforming something by changing its color. But the contents that have a star in it, it's the star we're changing the color of. So if I toggle this open and I toggle this open, and this is where I'm talking about it can be kind of buried. Notice that I'm not on that top layer anymore, so these are dots. That tells me that there are keys here, but they're not manipulatable. I can't grab them at this layer. Click, 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 I can't grab them. I'm inside the star, the polystar path. Okay, that is the path that it moves. Okay, we saw the path, right? I can animate that path. The stroke is the outline. The fill, let's go ahead and open that up. There's the color. So if I key the color, at this point, I'm remembering that it is red. All right, and by here, let's pick another color. I'm going to just click on this and say, why don't you turn blue? And let's move forward again in time and turn, I don't know, let's turn green. Why not? It's going to turn green. And then at the very end, I'm going to have it turn yellow so it's not such a weird change back to red. Okay, back to yellow. So now I have keyed this color. And amazingly, when we hit play, that star will now not only do all the other things, but it's also going to change color because we keyed that parameter. So keys are pretty easy to do. There's way more complicated things like parenting this set to this set. And we'll talk about parenting in probably the next video. But I just want you to see how easy it is to create the keys. Don't forget that if I click this stopwatch now, there are no more keys and it's just red the whole time. Okay. Well, it's yellow the whole time because that was the last one I deleted. Excuse me. That anything that has a stopwatch we can key, and sometimes you have to kind of go down the rabbit hole here to get to the keyable layer. And we're back out here on the surface. When I open up transform, there's those keys. All right, I hope that was helpful. As I said, I have a little bit of a cold today, so maybe it wasn't as smooth as I wanted it to be, but that's okay. We're going to do some more keying and some more cool stuff in the next video, and I hope to see you there. Have a great day. Be well. Bye.